Before we analyze the mechanics of the text, we have to establish the physical reality of its subject, the modern working-class artist. He punched a card and worked for Shasta Cable. He drove a shuttle bus for union pay. And when the lights went out, his strings did slay. In bars, he owned the stage and every table, danced with flashy skirts and wore a sable, while others blinked their eyes and held their say. The shadow people were not far lay. He found himself in things that veered off label. May the ivy, laurel, and jasmine so sweet cling crimson where sorrow sinks dark and deep, whereon these broken strings no longer speak. On his tomb a marbled angel guards his sleep. Oh, may the abyss find those who do not weep. Osiris, here in your shadow, a diamond to keep. That continuous reading serves as our completed artifact. We will now dismantle its specific structural and linguistic components to understand exactly how it generates its emotional impact. At its core, this poem demonstrates a democratization of the sublime. The text forces a collision between two distinct worlds, the modern temporal reality of union pay and Shasta Cable, and the elevated aesthetic traditions of antiquity. This establishes a precise narrative tension. The author sets out to elevate a blue-collar shuttle bus driver to the mythological status of an Egyptian deity, and must do so while maintaining the internal logic of the poem. Achieving that mythological elevation requires a highly rigorous architectural and linguistic framework. Let's trace how that framework is built. We begin with this visualization of the poem's structural constraints. The author utilizes a hybridized form. It adheres to the strict 14-line boundary of a sonnet, but adopts the mournful function of a traditional Greek monody. Looking at the first 8 lines, the octet, we see a traditional Italian ABBA rhyme scheme. This tightly ordered section establishes the subject's temporal labor and his mundane reality. But right here at line 9, the architecture shifts. This is the volta. The text pivots away from temporal stage vitality and descends into funereal stillness. To reinforce this pivot, the final 6 lines, the sestet, abandon the traditional Italian rules, adopting a modified CCC scheme. Notice the acoustic choices here. The author interweaves slant rhymes like sweet and speak with perfect rhymes like deep, sleep, weep, and keep. This shared long E vowel engineers a rising liturgical cadence meant for oral recitation. This rigid boundary acts as a vital containment vessel. By mourning within a strict 14-line formula, the author prevents the vastness of the elegy from dissolving into chaotic despair. Beyond structural constraints, the poem relies on phonetic texture as a subliminal rhetorical tool to physically impact the listener. Consider this diagram breaking down line 10. The author heavily concentrates hard C and K plosives in the phrase, cling crimson where sorrow sinks dark and deep. These aggressive consonants act as percussive strikes, delivering a visceral auditory impact as the verse descends. Contrast those plosives with the sibilants right next to them. The repeated S sounds in sorrow sinks auditorily mimic the literal frictional motion of a body descending into the earth. We hear a similar rhetorical rhythm at the very beginning of the text. The anaphora of "he punched a card," followed immediately by "he drove a shuttle bus," functions as a secular litany. These specific phonetic tools establish a ritualistic rhythm that honors the repetitive dignity of the subject's earthly labor. That mythic transition is further anchored by a distinct catalog of historic influences. The text employs Victorian and Gothic funerary motifs, connecting the marbled angel and the abyss to the monument aesthetics of poets like Mary Tighe. Earlier in the verse, the sable imagery channels an Elizabethan theatricality, giving the subject a high-status stage presence that contrasts his day job. This deliberate elevation of the subject is confirmed by the author's own edit history. In January 2026, the author struck the casual working title, Lines Written for a Broken String, and replaced it with Monody for a Broken String. Adopting the noun monody intentionally invokes the formal literary lineage of Milton's Lycidas, moving the work from a personal observation into a ritualistic funeral song. 3 months prior, the author adjusted the punctuation of the final 2 lines. They erased the terminal periods and replaced them with exclamation points to lock in a forceful emotional register for the poem's conclusion. These historical echoes and structural edits finalize the work's transition into a formal monument. High-value poetry relies on hermeneutic flexibility, the presence of multiple coexisting interpretations. This text actively sustains two readings. The first is an autobiographical elegy, honoring a blue-collar musician balancing a time card with his guitar. The second is a mythological allegory, where the broken string is fate's severed thread, and his mundane shuttle bus becomes Charon's ferry to the underworld. In this allegorical context, the shadow people represent the collective ancestors waiting in the abyss. Both of these readings are supported by the text's internal logic. This ambiguity forces the reader to actively participate in navigating the poem's layers, rather than passively consuming a single narrative. To resolve these interpretations, the text culminates in a direct invocation of Osiris, the Egyptian deity of the afterlife and regeneration. This occurs in the final line: "Osiris, here in your shadow, a diamond to keep." That diamond serves as the final metaphor for the subject's life. It operates as a geological reference. A diamond is the result of immense, sustained pressure. This diamond represents a mundane life spent punching a card, which is ultimately refined into a crystalline form by intense artistic discipline. The poem concludes that the subject's essence is not lost to the abyss. Instead, his creative life is preserved by the very shadow of death that might otherwise obscure him. Through this process, the text successfully extracts a mundane, labor-driven existence and reconstructs it into a lasting expression of the sublime. By containing sorrow within these rigid structural and linguistic walls, the author ensures that the subject's identity is not lost to time,